I love the study of maps, and more specifically, the study of data and statistics. I like it in a way that it provides us with a way to analyze and to construct an idea about the world from the viewpoint of utter rationality. And by being rational, I mean to look at things without bias and to understand the relationships, principles, and logics within the physical world without bias. So we can argue that, in a way, the study of data is the study of the process of removing bias from what we initially understood. But why is that important? I used to be a rather introverted person. And the demonstration of the quality of an introvert was probably never more obvious on the first day of your secondary school. And hence, as a result, I did not end up making friends on my first day of school. But now let's delve into what actually happened that day. So as an introvert, our defense mechanism tends to make us think stereotypically about people we have never seen before in our entire life. And although stereotypical thinking is incredibly discredited, it used to have a very different name back in tribal times, the animal instinct. For example, hearing a roar was considered as a sign of danger, perhaps from a predator, and tasting something sweet was considered as a source of energy that would allow us to survive. By having stereotypes, by making a pre-established opinion and assumption about an object, we will oftentimes be able to increase our chance of surviving. And that is probably the reason why we should all appreciate the importance of stereotypes. But as you've noticed, we are no longer in tribal times. And in our society today, the pre-established defense mechanism does not seem to work anymore. Stereotypical thinking nowadays is considered as the main source of biased opinion rather than a survival mindset. And that turns out to be the reason why I did not make friends in school. Because from my first impression, everyone around me all seemed to have a resting bitch face. So therefore, I have falsely assumed that they probably don't want to make friends with me, simply according to their facial expression. I was troubled by the biases that I used to put on everyone. But then it was one day that I eventually gained inspirations from a maths lesson one day about the setup of a hypothesis. And we were asked to compare between these two sets of data, demonstrating the heights of students from two different classes. And as you can see, the data does have variations in terms of its individual numbers and their average value. However, I was more than surprised and confused that we have to set up the hypothesis to assume that there are no difference between the two sets of data. And I was questioning, why do I have to make this naive assumption when literally everyone knows that there is an existing difference? Well, it turns out that I was the one that's being naive. The reason why we're not able to assume that there are differences between the data is because mathematical and statistical languages work in a completely different system compared to human perception. And it is a system that is designed to eliminate inherent bias. We're not able to conclude that the average value between the two sets of data is different because the levels of difference is not strong enough for us to make the conclusion. The reason behind the small difference may well be due to just randomness in the data. In fact, we can never make a conclusion about any certain data or anything in general without having sufficient evidence to prove that we're right, even though some properties may appear to be really obvious. And these apparent properties that lead to conclusions which ignore scientific reasoning is the most susceptible to causing biases. And that is why I realized that the rationality from mathematical languages can also be applicable in interpersonal relationships. I have started to make friends with more schoolmates since I realized the fact that an individual can be perfectly happy while having their resting bitch faces. And that is, I have clearly not obtained sufficient evidence to assume that they don't want to make friends with me before I actually thought so myself. However, that is only one of the many issues nowadays that's being caused by believing and trusting something based on very little evidence, particularly since the start of the age of social media. the spread of false information can be up to 10 times more efficient than the spread of genuine information, as we're often unaware of information source and credit. Moreover, this is also the reason behind the creation of extreme beliefs like the white supremacy, the misogyny, and the racism, as the effects of social media has contributed to congregate people with similar ideas and opinions. So we were never able to have a chance to hypothesize about the inherent bias of the beliefs. And this is where the genuine danger comes in. In statistics, the crucial stage to decide whether a set of data is significant is called hypothesis testing, where a standard cutoff point of 0.05 or 5% is often used. And this is what I believe is a guideline and principle that everyone should follow. We also need to have a moral cutoff point at constant times to remind us that we need to refrain from the danger of believing in something that we have yet to prove that we're absolutely right. We need to respect the chance of the ideas being false, and also respect others that may hypothesize that your ideas are wrong. By adopting the rationality in mathematical thinking, I hope that we can eventually restore the beauty of a mutually respected society with no discrimination and bias. Thank you.